Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In this video today, we're checking out a video titled The Amazing Truth About Mr. Rogers. I recently just did a reaction about Mr. Rogers, seeing some of his best moments, and he seems like a very inspirational guy. Like, he just seems like a very kind guy. I've seen some very impressive things he has done in that video, and people have been telling me stories about him as well in the comments, about the good that he's done and the impact he's even had on their lives in the comments. So it's really interesting to actually read them all. So this video is titled The Amazing Truth About Mr. Rogers. Just meant to be an overall genuinely nice guy. Let's get right into it.
Fred Rogers was an inspirational television personality who inspired countless children, and his long-running program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, will continue to educate young people for many generations to come. Here's the amazing truth about Mr. Rogers. For much of his career, Mr. Rogers was in high demand as an interview subject, but he was also considered a rather tough person to interview. Why? Well, he was just so gosh darned nice.
You don't set out to be rich or famous. What you set out to do is to be helpful.
You see, the friendly and curious demeanor we saw in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood wasn't an act. He was literally that friendly, on screen and off. That made him nearly impossible to interview, because he'd often steer the conversation wildly off course while trying to befriend the person interviewing him. Getting Rogers to open up and talk about himself was exceptionally hard, because he was always more interested in how his interviewer was doing. Rogers often had a profound effect on the people who interviewed him. He would end the conversation by telling the interviewer that he enjoyed meeting them, and then give them a little photo album of the time they'd literally just spent together.
What I love to take are pictures of people's faces.
Rogers was even known to call up interviewers years after the fact just to see how they were doing. Fred Rogers took exceptionally good care of himself. He didn't smoke or drink, and he adhered to a strict vegetarian diet, and not just for health reasons. He would often say that, "I don't want to eat anything that has a mother." Rogers also had an exercise regimen that would be punishing for a young man, let alone a guy in his 60s and 70s. He'd wake up every morning at 5 a.m. and swim for several hours before praying and starting work. Rogers' morning ritual involved looking at his bathroom scale, seeing the number 143, and smiling to himself. Mr. Rogers thought 143 was a very special number because he found a special pattern in it. As Won't You Be My Neighbor director Morgan Neville explained to CNBC,
to him, 143 was a kind of a private numerology that meant 143, I love you.
That's because, as Fred Rogers explained, it takes one letter to say I, and 4 letters to say love, and 3 letters to say you, 143. As the story goes, Rogers woke up one morning, saw that he weighed 143 pounds, and decided he'd do everything in his power to be reminded of love every morning. He apparently succeeded. According to the Fred Rogers Center, he kept his weight at 143 pounds for 30 years.
That is so impressive. What? Like, not only has this guy had a massive impact in the world, but to keep your weight the same for that long. I'm just finding out facts every second about him that just leave me mind blown. What?
At the height of his fame, Mr. Rogers received a lot of fan mail, and he wanted to answer it all. It's often claimed that he answered every single piece of fan mail he ever received, which is rather hard to believe. After all, he must have received thousands of letters in his lifetime. How could such a busy man possibly answer each one? But it sounds like he really did write back to each and every letter. And far from being generic niceties or canned responses, his replies were deeply heartfelt and personal. He let his fans know just how much their messages meant to him, making sure to say he was proud of them and very happy that they were friends. Francois Clemens played the resident cop in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He was initially hesitant to take on the role after being approached by Rogers. As he told NPR, "I grew up in the ghetto. I did not have a positive opinion of police officers. I really had a hard time putting myself in that role, so I was not excited about being Officer Clemens at all." Clemens eventually accepted the role and became one of the first African-American men to have a recurring role on a children's television show. In the 2018 documentary, Won't You Be My Neighbor, he says,
"There were black kids watching the show. They needed a black figure who would not let them down."
In one early episode, Mr. Rogers invited Clemens to soak his feet in his pool alongside his own. Today, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but this episode aired in 1969, back when segregated swimming pools were still very much a thing. Clemens was moved by the gesture and the symbolism of showing a black man and a white man as equals. Rogers and Clemens remained friends for life, and Rogers even revisited the scene in Clemens' last episode in 1993. Asked by Clemens what he was thinking about all those years ago as they were soaking their feet, Rogers smiled and said, "I was just thinking of all the different ways people say I love you." Do you love being able to record your
Oh, that is so heartwarming because he took a risk by doing that. Back in 1969, it's definitely a risk to do that on TV, you know. He was a very brave man. I really do respect that. It's really cool to see how far we've come in terms of stuff like that, to be
favorite
honest.
shows so you can watch them when it's convenient? If so, you should give thanks to Fred Rogers. He played a pivotal role in making that happen. When VCRs and Betamax broke onto the scene in 1984, a big selling point was that they could record live programming. Unfortunately, network execs freaked out. They felt that taping shows using this technology constituted copyright infringement. The ensuing lawsuit escalated all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States. Experts and witnesses were called to testify, and among them was Fred Rogers. While huge production studios and television networks duked it out over a perceived loss of proceeds, this public TV man, who comparatively made very little, said he had absolutely no objection to viewers recording episodes of his show. As he put it, "I just feel that anything that allows a person to be more active in the control of his or her life in a healthy way is important." Rogers' words definitely made an impact, and his testimony was considered instrumental in making the landmark decision. Ultimately, it was determined that taped recordings fall under fair use and that the manufacturers of those devices couldn't be held liable for copyright infringement.
Wow, so this guy also fought against the big companies in favor of fair use. Like what I'm doing now, react to the videos. You've probably seen like YouTubers mention the Fair Use Act. It kind of allows you to react and commentate to the videos and stuff like that. So, wow, he's even impacted my life indirectly. That's crazy.
Well, this is a surprising one. When you think of Mr. Rogers, you probably imagine him wearing one of his favorite sweaters on a cozy couch somewhere reading a book. You probably don't picture him hunkering down to watch a spine-tingling zombie film. When the late director George A. Romero was just starting out, he was having a hard time finding someone willing to give him a chance, until he met Mr. Rogers, that is. Recognizing that the aspiring filmmaker needed some camera experience, Rogers offered him a job on the Mr. Rogers Neighborhood crew.
Most of the people that are working professionals in media today from Pittsburgh worked for Fred. All of us started with Fred.
Fun fact, Michael Keaton was also a crew member on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood early on in his career.
Michael
It's one
Keaton,
thing
I
to
love
give
him, he's
someone a
awesome.
job, but did Fred Rogers ever watch any of Romero's scary movies? The answer is yes. He reportedly watched Night of the Living Dead and Dawn
Great
of the
movie.
Dead, and he apparently loved them both. When Romero asked what Rogers thought of his work, he reportedly said, "It's a lot of fun, George." Fred Rogers was born just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, so it's not too surprising that residents would want to honor his memory. In 2016, a Change.org petition started circulating. The hope was to raise enough signatures to inspire the Allegheny County Airport Authority and the city of Pittsburgh to officially name their airport the Fred Rogers International Airport. The online document explained that Pittsburgh is still an active transit hub, and for many people, our airport will be their first experience in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, that is true.
We wish to welcome everybody to our neighborhood.
Oh, that's really
Unsurprisingly,
sweet.
15,216 neighbors agreed. Bob Kurlick, Vice President of Media Relations for the Airport Authority, assured Pittsburgh Magazine that, "We appreciate the interest in the airport and creative ideas from travelers, and we know that Fred Rogers occupies a special place in the hearts of Pittsburghers and people around the world. Because of that, Mr. Rogers is already part of the experience here." Sounds like a missed opportunity to us. Fred Rogers thought it was
That's kind of a shame they didn't name it after him, but I guess there's like a lot of stuff and hoops you got to go through and stuff like that. It's kind of a shame though.
important to equip kids with the tools they'd need to navigate life's most difficult moments. He covered a wide range of topics on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and he wasn't afraid to touch upon some of life's darker twists and turns. In one episode, Prince Tuesday runs away from home. People correctly assume it's because he just can't deal with his parents' constant fighting at home.
Oh, Prince Tuesday. Have you been here for a long time?
I've been here long enough.
The story arc lasts for several episodes, with people continuing to search for Prince Tuesday.
I guess you know we're looking for the prince.
Yes, I know. That's why I thought I'd come and help.
And once he's found, a classmate even tells him that she feared the worst.
I thought that you were lost and maybe far, far away, and maybe even dead.
Kids at home were probably worried about the same thing. Instead of skirting around the issue of death, Fred Rogers faced it head on. Throughout the show, he taught kids how to cope with difficult emotions like fear, shame, and anger. He understood that kids needed to learn how to live in the real world, and he taught them how to be open and brave and own their feelings. Fred Rogers was honored with many awards in his lifetime and was deservedly inducted into the Television Hall of Fame in 1999.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing this clip in the other video, like a little short clip of this from the Best of Mr. Rogers. This was a beautiful moment.
In 2002, just a year before his death, he was presented the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President George W. Bush.
Fred Rogers has entertained and educated children for more than 30 years through his extraordinary public television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
David Newell played Mr. McFeely on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and acted as an associate producer on the show. He once mentioned to Rogers that many children were terrified of the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz, portrayed by the late actress Margaret Hamilton. Newell proposed bringing her onto the show so that kids could see she was neither wicked nor a witch in real life. Rogers loved that idea. He immediately reached out to Hamilton, asking if she'd like to appear on the show to explain to children that the Wicked Witch was just a character she played in a movie. Hamilton accepted the offer without a moment's hesitation. In her 1975 appearance on the show, she even wore her old costume one last time.
It's very nice to see you.
Oh, that's sweet.
Oh, that would be fun to be able to talk like that.
In 2003, generations of fans mourned Fred Rogers when he died from stomach cancer at the age of 74. And incredibly, the fine people at the International Astronomical Union found the perfect way to honor his memory. They named an asteroid after him. Discovered on March 21, 1993, the Mars-crossing asteroid, now known as 26858 Mr. Rogers, includes the following passage in its online description. Fred McFeely Rogers, 1928 to 2003, was a passionate advocate for children who taught that everyone is unique and deserving of love and respect just the way you are. For more than 30 years, he used his public television program Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood as a vehicle of service to the youngest members of the human family. After becoming an ordained minister in 1963, Fred Rogers gave up on living his life for the church and began pursuing a career in the arts. He was hired to make theme music for several shows on NBC, and he probably would have been quite comfortable living the rest of his life on that salary. But something about the job just didn't feel right to him. He reportedly felt that the network's reliance on ads and merchandise influenced the programming. He also felt like the things he was seeing on TV were contrary to his personal beliefs. He once said, "I saw people throwing pies at each other's faces, and that to me was such demeaning behavior. And if there's anything that bothers me, it's one person demeaning another. That really makes me mad." He decided to use that anger productively and left the job to focus on developing programs for children. He believed that television geared toward younger audiences should be free of advertising, and he believed programs should address real issues, teaching kids how to cope with everyday situations and emotions. He had to travel to Canada to get his first big break with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. It was there he created Mr. Rogers, an early version of the show. Eventually, he moved back to the States, where Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood debuted on February 19, 1968. Back in 1969, PBS was struggling to get off the ground. The concept of public television was new, and people were skeptical.
Yeah, and this was also a little clip I saw in the other video about him actually going in front of the US Senate to get more funding, and somehow he did it. That is very impressive.
Of its worth. Fred Rogers appeared before the United States Senate Subcommittee on Communications and was directly questioned by Rhode Island Senator John Pastore, a man who was known for his gruffness.
This is what I give. I give an expression of care every day to each child to help him realize that he is unique.
After just over 6 minutes, Pastore admitted that he had goosebumps listening to Rogers speak about his show, and then he readily agreed to give PBS the requested funding.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. Looks like you just earned the $20 million.
Pastore was so enamored with Rogers, he even requested a copy of the show because he wanted to watch it himself. In one particularly powerful moment, Rogers explains that drama doesn't have to involve people bopping one another over the head. It can simply show how scary it can be for a kid to get a haircut.
I'm very much concerned, as I know you are, about what's being delivered to our children in this country.
True drama, he argued, could be as simple as watching two men work out their anger in a constructive way. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more grunge videos about your favorite stuff are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single.
Okay, so I think that's the end of the video, and that was the amazing truth about Mr. Rogers. So everything I just find out about this guy, I don't know how he was just so kind. He wanted to treat everyone with respect. He was taking a lot of risks, about the officer by, bathing in the pool with him, especially in 1969. That's a huge risk. He went before the U.S. Senate to get more funding for public television to help the children. Everything I just find out about him, he just seems like such a nice guy. I also can't believe he actually gave George Romero his start, because George Romero is a legendary director, Night of the Living Dead. I also remember him from Call of the Dead, if you remember Black Ops 1. So everything I just find out about him is just kind of crazy. And the weight thing as well, the fact that he remained 143 pounds for 30 years. I don't know how one man is so impressive. We really need someone like this now. But yeah, I don't know. You never know. It could happen again, but the world just seems so corrupted now that we definitely need someone like that, especially for the younger children. You see the kids nowadays, they're watching Coco Melon and just kind of brain rot content. It's definitely got worse. So, Mr. Rogers, we need someone like that now. So I'll see you guys next video. Have a great day, everyone. I'd like to find out about him, and just seeing him, so inspirational.